Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being on time. We welcome you to today's event in commemorating the International Women's Day 2022 with the theme Breaking the Bias. And our topic for today is Navigating Gender Bias. And this event is brought to you by Plan International Nigerian Partnership with Aspire Coronation Trust Act Foundation. And my name is Audrey Odogu. I will be your host through this event, and we're looking forward to a very engaging one. Please type in the chat your name, your organization, and where you are joining us from. We'll be happy to know that. And we'll be starting in a few minutes. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I see Ngozi Oyewole she's the president of Strategic Women and Youth Institute. Welcome. Dr. Gloria Pulju from Lee Foundation, Christopher Opio from Oil Refinery Residents Association, Uganda. I see Joel Bassi from Center for Clinical Care and Clinical Research, Calabar, River State, Nigeria. I see Jerry Owabukaye, Houston, Texas. I see Oluwatoyin Olabisi, Women and Girl Child Capabilities, Kaduna State, Nigeria. Thank you. Keep dropping in the chat where you're joining us from. Warla Kayode from Irede Foundation, Lagos. Fatima Mohammed Mufai from Zonal Coordinator, Young Ambassadors Against Drug Abuse Initiative. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Swesi Mary Kuma from Angel Support Foundation, Benue State, you're welcome. Bat Ajah from Angel Support Foundation. Chisom Mabia, Social Entrepreneur Trainer, Women Initiative for Family Entrepreneur Empowerment, WIFI. You are all welcome. So at this point, we'll be having the welcome address from the Country Director of Plan International Nigeria. He'll be telling you a bit more about Plan International Nigeria as he welcomes you all for today's event. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for sharing where you're joining us from. And we have our panelists here today, and we'll move on straight into our panel. And I'm going to introduce to you the moderator for today, Mr. Tunde Aremo. Mr. Tunde, you are muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry for some of these glitches once in a while with technology. So kindly let me hand over to the country director of Plan International Nigeria, Mr. Chasuche, to actually welcome us. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, our distinguished audience. Thank you for coming for this very powerful and interesting webinar. We are delighted to welcome you all to this event. I can assure you that this is going to be a power-packed session, and we are pleased to be hosting this very specially with the ACT Foundation. On behalf of Plan International and ACT Foundation, I welcome you all. My name is Charles Usie. I serve as the country director for Plan International here in Nigeria. Plan International is one of the international development organizations operating across the world. Currently, we're operating in over 75 countries. We've been active here in Nigeria since 2014. It's interesting to note that this week we celebrated the 85th anniversary of Plan International. So we're still in the celebration mood, and also still within the month of celebrating our women, which is part of why we exist. So for Plan International, our essential purpose is to expand and to secure more transformational spaces for women and girls everywhere in the world. Particularly in Nigeria, we have a target of expanding and negotiating transformational spaces in favor of 10 million girls. So we have a huge agenda in front of us. We have a tall dream, and we are conscious that as Plan International of just barely 300 staff in about 10 states in Nigeria, we will not be able to do this alone. We will need partnerships. We will need high-valued individuals. We will need networks to mobilize, to organize, for us to be able to reach out to 10 million girls in Nigeria. And so for us, this conversation means more than just a gathering of experts to speak. This is part of our agenda to mobilize. This is part of our agenda to connect with the right people. And that's why we're in partnership right now with ACT Foundation to make this webinar successful. This is the kind of partnerships we are actually deliberate about in creating and in establishing, for us to be able to reach out to our target. But this is not just our target for Plan. This is for Nigeria. This is for the girl child in Nigeria. This is for women in Nigeria. And so this conversation is going to help us crystallize some of those other issues, barriers, biases, resistance, obstacles, for women and girls to actualize their full potentials in Nigeria. It is no more rocket science. I think we're beginning to come out of that denial that we can continue to do business as usual to the detriment of women and girls. I think we're beginning to appreciate that we must do things differently. I think we're beginning to appreciate that this is no more just talk or rhetorics. We must take action, relevant action, deliberate action, and with an element of urgency, to it. So for Plan International, this is our statement of all the things we talk about when we say women and girls, when we say standing for women and girls, when we say transforming power relations in favor of women and girls. This is it. This is part of it, taking deliberate action to make it happen. So I'm very grateful for the partnership with ACT Foundation today. I'm delighted, to be part of this and for Plan to be part of this conversation and, convening this this group. I'm grateful to my colleagues in Plan and the ACT Foundation to have made this happen at this point in time. This means a lot to us, and we hope that this will take us into more spaces for how we can continue to lead the pack and to be at the forefront of every conversation and every gathering that relates to women and girls in Nigeria. You will find Plan there. That is who we are. That is what we do. This is what keeps us awake. This is why we come to work every day. This is why we wear this badge for women and for girls. And this event, this webinar today, is a statement of our commitment. So I thank you very much. And I wish us a very interesting and fulfilling conversation from this moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Osei, for that welcome address and letting us know more about Plan International Nigeria. Mr. Tunde, I will be introducing you shortly, but I'll go ahead to also talk a bit about ACT Foundation. Mr. Tunde, do you mind muting your mic?
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Audrey Odogo, and I am the Partnership and Engagement Executive at Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. ACT Foundation is excited to work with Plan International Nigeria on this event to commemorate the International Women's Day 2022. ACT Foundation is a grant-making organization, headquarters here in Lagos State, and we serve nonprofits and social enterprise across Africa. We are a grant-making organization, and our mission here is to support and to grow the capacity of social enterprises and nonprofits across Africa. Our focus area remains around health, entrepreneurship, environment, and leadership. We fund programs and interventions around these 4 focus areas across Africa. Besides that, we also support nonprofits and contribute to the sector by organizing trainings. And if you are also a good follower of ACT Foundation, you know that we have monthly trainings across different areas that can actually help to improve professionals, leaders of nonprofits and organizations. We also have the professional volunteer program that help to continue to build the capacity in challenging areas with our grantees. And we also find a way to also bring multi-stakeholders players to one room for our annual conference called the Breakfast Dialogue. You can check our website, www.actrustfoundation.org, to learn more about us. For the sake of time, we are going to go straight into the panel. Our panelists are here eager to speak on the topic navigating gender bias, and we're looking forward to your questions and engagement on the chat. Feel free to use the raise hand icon at the point of Q&A, and also drop questions in the chat as we go along. We'll pick them up and we'll try to respond to as many questions as possible. So at this point, I'll welcome Mr. Tunde Aremo, the moderator, to come on. And I would also welcome our panelists, Crystal Chibo. She's the Executive Director of the Irede Foundation. Crystal, do you want to say hello, please?
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Tunde. Thank you so much for having us, Plan International and ACT Foundation. It's good to be here.
You're welcome. And we also have Chioma here. Chioma Agwego. She is the board member of Plan International Nigeria and the Executive Director and CEO of TechHat. Chioma, do you want to say hello?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. And we have Abosede Lewo. She is the Executive Director of Girls Aid Initiative and Kia Health. Her organization is a grantee of ACT Foundation, and also is the Irede Foundation, a grantee of ACT Foundation. So on that note, we would go on into the panel. Mr. Tunde, I would now hand over to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Audrey. Thanks everyone who is here. It's great having all of us here. I won't take much of a time with introduction, especially with the powerful welcome address both by the country director of Plan International in Nigeria, Charles Use, and then from Audrey as well. The issue of women's rights is, and guest rights are those critical things that are very, very central to issue of not just human development, but especially for countries as ours. And it's also very critical in terms of what are those narratives out there? What are those issues that we are responding to, and how we're responding to them? And then the broader issue of gender rights are also expanding every day. And the issue is, how are they addressed in private space, in public space, but most especially in public space, because this also has a big intervening role in all of our national, private, public, and even business life. I will come to the panelists for initial thoughts around the issue of gender, and I will build it around the issue of the SDG 5, which is actually anchored strictly on the issue of achieving gender equality and empowerment for all women and girls, especially if we are talking about barriers, as we've been speaking to in the past few weeks, particularly around this year's celebration of International Women's Day. And oftentimes, yes, we talk about about gender equality as stated in SDG 5, but sometimes too, we also tend to lose sight of the fact that even closer home for Goal 17 of the Agenda 2063 of the African Union. It's also a central issue there, where the Goal 17 also talks about full gender equality in all spheres of life. So how are these being addressed, and how much progress have we made in our national life in the various efforts that have been made, both in public space and in the private sector as well, because the tendency is for us to also just look at the public sector and forget the private sector because of the central role also in our national development, economic sphere, political space, social relationship, and everything. So let me first come to you, Dr. Abosede Lewu. I hope I got that pronunciation right.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Abosede, and I'm the CEO of Girls Aid Initiative, and it's an absolute pleasure and honor to be on this panel. I look forward to sharing and most especially to learning from everyone. So, Tunde, thanks for the question. I agree with all the things you said, that it's both what we see in our public life and private lives. But when we talk about Goal 5, for a lot of people, it's like we say gender equality, but what are the parameters that gender equality entails? If we remind ourselves of what this parameter entails, we can actually score ourselves on how well we're doing or how well we're not doing. So let me just quickly mention a few of the highlights of this SDG 5. They have, like, I know the way they divide the targets into numbers and alphabet, but it's about 9 targets we're talking about. So we've talked about discrimination against, we're talking about girls and women, violence, harmful practices like early marriage, FGM, recognizing unpaid labor and domestic work. What are the participatory opportunities that women have in politics? What is the access to sexual and reproductive health? Is it universal for women? Do women have access to economic inheritance? Do we have technologies that support girls and women? And do we have the legal framework that allows women to thrive? So when we look at all these little parameters, even in our own way, we can score ourselves. So I will share from the Nigerian perspective, which is where I'm mostly domiciled. From a lot of our studies, we see that things like discrimination, violence, and harmful practices, we've not really done very well. on this platform. So even if you look at our NDHS, even a lot of women still believe that women sometimes women or girls deserve to be beaten by their partners if they don't cook, if they argue, all these salient things that happens in our environment. We still have child marriage. We have a federal law that says a girl cannot marry before 18, but we have, I think, 10 or 11 states that are yet to adopt it, where whenever a girl is married, she's considered a woman. So that takes them away from the law. So how are we doing on all those discriminatory action? We look at our sexual and reproductive health. We're still not doing well in maternal mortality. Our contraceptive prevalence rate is still very low. And of course, the big elephant in the room is participation in leadership, especially political space, especially with what happened in Nigeria this March. We're looking at a country that has over 90% male representation at parliamentary. I think we're the last in Africa. And this is very interesting because Rwanda, that is also in Africa, has the highest number of female parliaments. So it's not like it's an African agenda to have women not in power. We have countries that have almost 50%, 30, 20%, but ours is less than 5% lawmakers. So if you ask how we're doing, even when we score ourselves individually without even looking at all other parameters, I think we can do better. And I think it also starts from how we have these conversations at the most basic unit in our community, which is households and families. This is where we can actually start to have this conversation. And then just to quickly segue into what is bias that we talk about, gender bias. When you're a particular gender and it gives you an advantage over the other gender. So that is basically what we're talking about. So that is one gender has been favored, and these parameters, when we look at them, one gender has not been favored. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Abosede. Let me quickly come to you, Chioma. You actually, apart from being on our board, you run an organization that also deals with the issue of technology, access to technology for young girls and young women. From your home view, how well have we done as a country, particularly in terms of technological education, in terms of access for girls and then young women, and even in for older women too, in that field of technology?
All right, thank you. And good morning again to everyone. I think that we cannot talk about technology without talking about access to an education. And the statistics are quite dire for young women and for girls in Nigeria. There's a UNESCO report that says that 40% of the girls that are out, there are 40% of girls that are out of school in Nigeria. And even the ones who make it into school, have an expectancy of about 9 years as opposed to 17 years of study in other climes. And I must agree very heavily with what Dr. Abosede said about, as it were, the cross-cutting nature of gender across the entire SDGs. Because a lot of times we talk about SDGs and we focus on Goal 5 because that has to do with women. But the truth is you cannot effectively achieve the SDGs without women. So as far as I'm concerned, all of the SDGs have to do with women. Speaking more specifically to technology though, Nigeria hasn't done well. If we're going to be really honest with ourselves, we haven't done well. And what's worse is we don't seem to be on the path to doing well. Because if you first realize that there's a problem, then you can start to think about how do we mitigate, what do we solve, etc. But we have not prioritized the education of our girls and even of our boys. We have not prioritized the upskilling of our girls and of our boys, which means that the problems that we have today will most likely have, in the next 5 years. We have failed to grasp the complexity or the complexities of the problems when we don't educate our young girls. When we don't educate our young boys, the state of vulnerability continues, and they are more at risk of being, absorbed into antisocial behavior, even into criminal behavior. So my verdict, we're not doing well, but even worse, we are two things. One, we do not have a full recognition of the problems that we face. And two, there is no intention to understand this issue clearly enough to be able to make any significant changes. Thank you.
Mr. Tunde, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with us. Thanks a lot for that intervention, Choma. Laban, let me quickly come to you because Choma actually raised a critical issue of education. You've been on the field, you've been working on education issue for quite a while now. And then what is your take on where we are, particularly in terms of access for education for girls? I mean, we talk extensively every time about gender responsive public education sector. How well have we done there? Briefly too.
All right, thank you very much, Tunde, and apologies for joining in late. Let me go straight to answer you. We have not done well. I'm sure others have put the perspective right when it comes to the issue of what the Goal 5 entails. The first is the issue of ending gender disparity. The truth is that, of course, if you go to schools, over the years, we have been able to bridge the gap of having the gender parity. We call it the gender parity index. To some extent, you have equal number of boys and girls in schools now. But the issue is that it goes beyond numbers. It has to do with the issue of the condition at which the children or the learners learn. Is it gender responsive? How are we doing in terms of providing infrastructure for girls? Where are we with the issue of having good number of teachers that are women that can support girls in school? So if you look at the figures and you weigh it against some of these national figures that are actually coming up, it is not looking well. So the issue of gender parity, it goes beyond numbers. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's not just looking at the equal number of boys and girls, but the condition at which the girls that are in school that are learning, that's where the focus is, and we're not doing well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Laban. Thanks. I mean, one thing that is coming very clear is the issue of the issue about access, about the way we are structured, the way we are planned, we do our planning, and then the way in which we actually run our affairs, either in the private sector or in the public sector. Even, but one critical thing is also the element of policy and law. And what has been the news in recent times for all of us who are in Nigeria is also the issue of the gender rights laws. And then one of the ones that have failed in recent times that we've had challenge with is that bill at the National Assembly, which was actually sponsored by I think Senator Olujimi from Ekiti State, in terms of which actually was thrown out in December last year by the Senate of Nigeria, unfortunately. And then the issue of equal rights for women has also been the mainstream of public discourse. So let me come to you, Krista. Where do you think we are? And then what are the intervening factors that cultural biases, cultural views, and then the lens which we use in at looking at the issue of women's rights, particularly in a social relationship, what role they play? Where are we in terms of ensuring the rights of women constitutionally and through national policies and laws?
Thank you so much, Tunde. Thank you, everyone, again for having me. I think you've answered the question. If we had a bill that was, brought to the National Assembly and then it was thrown off, then it basically tells us where we are as a nation. But the first thing that I want to establish is when you think of culturally, religiously, politically, what is said about women, it's basically that women are weak, women are unable to do things. And as a result of that, we do not have a fair chance to actually come to the table. Lately, you will see in the private sector, and I would say in civil society, a lot of support for women. And so you will probably hear this woman was appointed to the board or is now the chairman of this or the MD of this location or this company. But all of this is happening in the private sector and in civil society. And so when you look at the public sector, we are really at, I won't even say zero, I would say minus 10% or something like that, because we don't have a representation. And when I say we, I'm saying women. And so when you are not at the table, you can't even make decisions. And so I agree very much with Chioma on some of the things that need to start happening. If you don't have access to education, you have very limited, very, very limited chance to actually get to the place where you start having conversation at the table. And so for you to be in the public office, you definitely need to have a minimum of have a primary school and secondary school education. So if you don't go to school, then there's a problem. And secondly, if you look at it, even when you're looking at Nigeria, it's not even balanced. The story when it comes to northern Nigeria is different from when it comes to the West or the South. So you see that even within the country, we have no representation. And then even children or people within the North, women in the North, don't even have the access to go to school because culturally, they probably need to just stay back at home and take care of the family. And some of these things I'm putting in inverted commas because, these are the real issues and the things that come to play. Another way that I would like to look at this conversation will now be the intersection that happens when it comes to women with disabilities. So usually when I sit back, I'm like, women are not given a fair chance. But when it now comes to women with disabilities, because I work within the disability community, you realize that you don't even have any chance at all. So if a woman is weak, what then happens to a woman with disability? And Ambassador already said it all. If we look at all of the parameters of the things that we are looking at, we are yet to really begin on this journey. So for me, when I start thinking of ways to go, it's first having the right policies in place. And we can't have those policies in place if we don't have a seat at the table. So then we need to address with education. So pretty much I agree with Bosse, I agree with Chioma, I agree with Laban that, we have a long way to go and we just really need to start now and start with education and the family.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Krista. I mean, just going back to what you said now and hearing all of us now, and I'm actually very particular about target, a part of target 5 of Go 5 itself, which was talking about the issue of reforms, undertaking reforms to give women equal rights to economic resources as well as access to ownership and control over land and other forms of property, could be financial services, issue of inheritance, natural resources. And that has to be in accordance with national laws, which is also my major concern. In terms of our own efforts at actually ensuring the reforms of our laws, maybe this is also one critical question we need to ask ourselves. How well have we done? Have we done enough? What are the gaps that are there? Because we keep talking about the intervention of cultural biases. There's also the issue of economic biases, as many people are also want to say in certain sectors, that when you talk about, for instance, the issue of unpaid care work, people will always tell you that the reason why there will be resistance to recognition of unpaid care work is also because it's what we call a socially relevant labor that has been appropriated by not just men, but even members of the ruling class to ensure that, okay, it's not recognized and it does not affect profits. I will come back to you, Krista. I know a lot of organizations, particularly in the civil society group, have made effort in terms of addressing challenges with law reform. Where do you think we are probably not doing very well that we need to still look at and strengthen ourselves?
Thank you so much. There is a lot of work that has been done, but I think we still have a lot of gap in terms of implementation of some of the things that are out there. So we have all of these policies, we have all of this advocacy work that is happening, you know, women's rights and pushing for all of these agendas. However, when it comes to implementation of the things that are, you know, the policies that are in place, we have a lot of gaps. So I, for one, we think that one of the things that we need to push for is to ensure that these things are implemented. There is nothing, no punishment that is being meted to anyone that does not, you know, make sure that these things are in place. So I give you a case in point, and really I want to drive it home with respect to disability. There is a law that has been approved, and you know it's out there, but no one is keeping to it. Nobody is following through to say, why are we not, you know, why is this not being done? I remember being in a conversation with one of the employers of labor, and we were talking about the laws that are in place for persons with disability, because this person had employed someone, and while in you know, doing his work, he actually got amputated. And then he told me, he said, but I'm even trying, keeping him. I don't have to make the conditions favorable. Nobody is going to come here to come and do, you know, tell me that I'm not doing the right thing. I can decide to sack him because, you know, he's not doing this again. And my point was, you know, this is the law. There is an agency that is in charge of this, making sure that this thing should happen. And, you know, he was so sure that nothing is going to happen to him if he does not keep his part of the bargain. So I would say, let's push for implementation. Enough of all the new policies and bringing new policies and different things. Let's consolidate efforts to make sure that there is implementation of the things that we currently have in place. And that's where I think we will start making a headway. Also, one of the things that you will see is, when you look at Nigeria, it's really divided into, I think, two major countries per se. Some of the things that happen in the north and some of the things that happen in the southwestern part of Nigeria, it's really different. So for instance, when you talk about child marriage, you think of it and it's okay. Just like Bosse said, there are 11 states that have not signed it. And there's really nothing that you can do. So I can go to that part of the country and say, you know, I want to push for whatever it is. According to the law that is implemented where I live, it's okay for me to marry a 12-year-old and I just go ahead and nothing is going to happen because there is a law that supports that. So I think these are some of the policies also that we need to merge together and ensure that we're speaking in one voice.
Okay, thanks, Krista. I think we are getting somewhere here because you also raised the critical issue of it's not just about having the laws in place, it's not just about having the policies. Yes, we have the challenge, whatever we try to choose to call it in different states, either child rights law or child protection law, we are still struggling with some states having to pass it. But even in the places where they've passed it, there are still challenges that we have. Probably, Abiodun, you've been with us. Sorry, I have not come to you. I'm deliberately waiting. What's your take on it? What are actually those challenges around, not beyond, because we keep saying, okay, the laws are there, they are not being implemented. What are the real challenges? Yeah, Abiodun.
Abiodun, you're muted, although she's not on the panel, but I'm sure she can respond a bit to that.
Okay, I was thinking Abiodun is on the panel with us.
Probably what?
Okay, sorry about that.
But then I could just simply chip in that political will is an issue here. So that would stand out as a challenge why we're not seeing, these policies translating into action. That I can say. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, sorry for the mix-up, and maybe I will still bring that question up. I'm still very curious about what are those things that we need to start looking at. Let me come to you, Choma. You work with a lot of organizations, support a lot of agencies that are also working on these issues of access for girls and women. What are those things that we need to actually pay serious attention to about implementations of the law and policies that I think are not there?
Thank you very much. This is a big question, but one that we have to act within pretty much every day. I think there's a multifaceted approach that's needed to ensure that we can make some progress. And we have to engage both our elected representatives, we need to engage our traditional leaders, our religious leaders, our pretty much everyone holding some sort of public office. The engagement must be continuous, it must be consistent, and it must be one message. One of such messages is you have nothing to do with a child under the age of 18, right? And regardless of how we might want to spin it, any sexual relations with a child as enshrined in our laws, a person under the age of 18 is criminal. There's no two ways about that. So that engagement is critical. The second thing is organizations need to work together. And we are starting to see the fruit. We're starting to reap the fruits of organizations working together. I think we have all realized that, working in silos is just, duplicating efforts, but also, expending scarce resources in places where they are not most needed. So working together is critical. It always excites me to see collaboration, to see people coming together to join forces. One of the things I also like is that donors are starting to ask that civil society organizations prioritize working together. Such a brilliant thing, because people are able to bring their strengths, you're able to build capacity within the organizations at the same time, but also people are able to leverage the networks they have to reach more people. Truly brilliant thing. Something else we must do is private sector involvement, which is one of the reasons I'm quite excited by the work that ACT does. So the Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. Private sector involvement is truly, truly critical to ensure that we not only plug the gaps, but you have the voice of business where it matters most, and you have not only the voice of business, but you have the might of business, in this case referring to resources and technical resources as well, but also strategic resources to ensure that we move these points forward. Finally, there's a reorientation that needs to happen as far as the ways in which we engage with each other are concerned. For instance, there have been conversations online about rape culture. And sometimes we think that violence has been committed when, for instance, rape has occurred, or when a woman has been beaten, or when a woman has been violated in some way. What we often fail to acknowledge are the little, as it were, normative societal ladders leading up to that one violent act. So we excuse catcalling, we excuse bullying, online bullying, we excuse all of these little things, but then we have this outrage when something violent happens, but we have excused the precursors to that, right? So we have no right, as it were, to be outraged when violence happens. So I strongly believe there should be reorientation, and we should take all the opportunities to affect reorientation. And again, this is why we come back to private sector, because when you look at franchises that get the most eyeballs on television, for instance, these are backed by private sector. So if we engage private sector and say, you know what, we're interested in having these conversations online, we're interested in platforming these issues online, or platforming these issues within these, millions of eyeballs type of programming, we are more likely to get the word out faster than any civil society organization can do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chioma. As we are discussing, I mean, one thing that is also occurring to me is that yes, when we talk about the challenges with actually breaking this bias and looking at the law and the policy environment, I mean, we said that just as has been said by some of us here, the challenge not really at times is not just about having in place policies and laws. Yes, they may not be as good as we want them to be, but there are some. But what has also happened to them? I mean, thank you, Chioma. You've spoken about the need for collaborations, and thanks to Krista for your take on it. I will come to both Audrey and Abosede. And what interests me is the issue that, yeah, these laws are in place, these policies are in place in some places. But then the challenge is their implementation, because in many places there are no implementation frameworks. Where there are implementation frameworks, we also have challenges with enforcement of those laws. And then, but you can also talk about implementation framework actually coming alive and being activated without support system in place. So let me ask us, that's Audrey and Abosede, what support system do we have in place to actually address gender biases in all the spaces we have, either in the private sector, either in the public sector? And then do they exist at all? If they exist, what are they? Where are they?
Okay, so I always try to address this question from inside outward. So, just like everybody has said, I agreed with them. If you even something as little as domestic work that we talked about that is unpaid, is actually paid. It's who is paying for it that we've not acknowledged. So you have a child, boy and girl, you have two children, boy and girl. They are both in school, but when they both come back from school, you expect the daughter to help you to do all the domestic chores while the boy is not assigned anything. You are doing that. When you have a female help that is working so that you can do other things, someone is paying for it. When you put your children in after school, when you have all those support systems that creates that ecosystem that allows you to thrive, is maybe depriving someone of an opportunity to grow. So the first support system that we must acknowledge is what happens in our homes individually. What support are we creating for girls to thrive? Just like you said, Laban, there is numerical equality sometimes, both girls and boys in school. But when we talk about ceiling or performance in school, they are not performing at the same level. Another support system that we must talk about that we are not even, is menstrual health. For a lot of girls and women in school, a girl tends to menstruate between 3 and 7 days a month. So tentatively, there's about 45 days of schooling. There are girls that on the days that they are on their period, they can't actually go to school because there is no sanitary towel, there is no place to change, there's no place to clean up. So this also deprives girls of some of these opportunities. Now, when we talk about gender bias in the workspace, what support system do you create? We have units. We have people that say, oh, they don't want to work with women. They don't want to work with girls because of one reason or the other, that maybe the boys or the men are more available. So they sort of create this hegemony where everybody is like them, like men don't have period, men don't go on maternity leave, men don't have, different things that women have. They don't get pregnant, they don't have all these things. So before you know it, unconsciously, even in your institutions, you are also reducing the number of women that can function there. So when we talk about support system, it's not just what happens at the, like you said, at the top level. No matter what rules you put in place, if there are no punitive measures or if there's no will to do it, then nothing can happen. So I give you an instance where we talk about enrollment. I've seen house girls that are working or domestic help, that the money is being remitted home to pay for their brother's school fees. What is the logic behind that? I've seen people that the sons are professors and the daughters didn't do more than primary school. These are things, frameworks in homes that believes in the role of girls. Or you ask parents, they said, well, no matter how educated this child is, she's going to get married and change names. So they rather invest in their son's education than invest in their daughter's education. So what support are we creating from home? what punitive measures are in place to make sure that parents are enforced? Like this child marriage you talk about, even without the law, if the parent knows the value of the child, if the parent values that child of that female gender, that parent is going to ensure that that girl gets an education, has an opportunity to be wealthy in life, as opposed to just trading her off to marry the next person. So for me, I found that even though we have a lot of policies, the policies stop at most people's door. Once they get into their house, they are their own law, especially in a country like Nigeria, where everybody is providing lights, providing security. You are your own chief of staff. So whatever is your value is what you promote in your house. I do a lot of career counseling for girls in or different schools. I have lost count of the number of times that girls have told me that I want to be president, but my mom or my dad says I can't be. I want to be this. My parents say I can't, I don't have the strength for this. So we keep reinforcing these biases as family, as caregivers to these children. So, or to these girls. So what am I saying? If you have in the public space or in a working environment, take cognizance of yourself. I'm happy that this conversation, we have men on this conversation. This is what we all need to do. We have to have inclusive spaces. You have 10 staffs and you have only one female. Ask yourself, are you interviewing people that look more like you without even being aware of it? Because you have to bring your bias to your forefront for you to know that you are actually enforcing some characters. Or maybe you've had an experience with a female staff you don't like, and you just shut down, even when you see qualified females. Or do you request females in public or private spaces to have, relations to get offices? You're not even assessing them based on their qualifications. So when we all start taking cognizance of all this, then we'll be able to create a framework that is really practical and can be used.
All right, thanks a lot, Abosede. Let me quickly come to you, Audrey, briefly on that. Maybe you can speak to it briefly before I go to Laban, because I also, Abosede talking about men being here, I also trigger a question I want to direct specifically to Laban, but please, Audrey, your take on this.
Thank you, Mr. Tunde. So what I think is we all really have a role to play, and what is most important is that sometimes we don't question what we practice. So if we question why are things the way they are, why are certain practices conditioned for men or boys, and why are they not for girls? And oftentimes we have more of the girls or young ladies or women who try to challenge this situation, but instead the norm, has conditioned us not to even question. So who should really be questioning this situation? So I think we need to be more open-minded in a way that we can continue to say, okay, this should be an open role. Simple things like, when you talk about a policeman or a fireman, we all know about that, but we barely would say a firewoman or a policewoman. Just simple things like that comes to our subconscious that we always have to, or you say the chairman of the board or the chairman of the committee. These little things are the things that, condition us. And sometimes we have to pause and think, what is the best way to really approach this? It's how we name things, it's how we name names that really speak to how we act towards them and how we continue to shape the society that we live in. So to me, it's about the little things. It's not really about the policies or this, but it's everyday practice. When you come in, who holds the door, who shuts the door, who washes the dishes, who takes out the bin? Why are those things constrained to gender? Why can't anyone just do it and find out who knows how to do it best? And the same thing that comes to recruitment.
Okay, thanks a lot, Audrey. Laban, Abosede did make mention of the fact that there are men in the house, and maybe when we throw the mic open, we expect some other men to make some intervention. But for you, you are the male on the panel here with us. I'm curious, still about this issue of the law, the implementation of the law. So they exist, they are everywhere. And then I know that you have worked in some states where the states have made commitments to girls' education, which is one of the critical things that Chioma and other panelists have raised. And one or two of them have even stated that they are going to commit as much as 25% of their budgets to to guest education, what has happened? Where are we? And what are the gaps that exist?
All right, thank you very much, Tunde. Yes, you have the laws, you have the policies, you have the guidelines, but you're not thinking of the person that will drive the force. We mentioned political will, someone mentioned political will, yes, good. But who is the driver? What's his mindset? I think these are things that are very important for us to look at. How do we promote positive masculinity? How do we ensure that men are not wrapped up in the culture mindset concerning the issue of gender and inclusion? For me and you today, it's easy because to some extent over the years, we have shifted from that mindset to a more positive way of thinking. So how do we involve men? How do we create a platform? I remember in many of our projects, we bring in this component of male champions into it. How do men promote that particular thing that we want them to move ahead? So I think, yes, having the laws, having the policies, the guidelines are good, but how do we continue to sensitize men about the need for them to think positively about all these issues? For me, it's very important, and I believe that is where the gap is. Yes, laws can be there. You will even have the numbers, but who drives the force? What's his thinking about it? Does he even believe that this should happen, or he's just doing it for the sake of having it there, or for the sake of, okay, because United Nations says we should have this number, then we should have it. If we don't have it, maybe there's one law, one loan that we can assess. Because if you go to the parliament, that is the thinking actually. If you push them, of course, they will sign it off as ticking the box. Yes, okay, let's have them 50% in. Now, but yes, you are in, but what's the mindset of the person driving the force? So for me, I think that is where the gap is. And I think it's time for us to start promoting this issue of positive masculinity very well. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, Laban. I'm coming to you, Krista. And then, I mean, you run an organization that actually, you talk about bringing purposeful living to children with peculiar need and their caregivers. And this is something very critical, because when you talk about gender, a lot of time we don't have an holistic view of it. So one question that has always bothered me about that is, in terms of knowledge, in terms of awareness, that will actually lead to that gender by dealing with those issues of gender bias. How much of it is there? How much have we done? I mean, it's very easy for us, for those on the panel, and if I look through the list of attendees here, quite a substantial number of us are likely to be the people in the development sector. So what is there that we have done, or what is there that we also need to do in terms of awareness creation?
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I think I should just give a bit of perspective. So beyond children also that have disabilities, we work with the young persons with disabilities because we realized that, you know, the children finally become the adults or the young adults, and then they become adults. And then, so your support to children sometimes needs to continue. And I will just give one very good example, one of the things that we've done, and it's good to be on this call with ACT Foundation. And that is a leadership program that we did in support with or partnership with ACT Foundation, because ACT Foundation provided the funds for us to do the leadership program for those young persons with disabilities. So across different disabilities, we were training with skills that they needed to be able to, I would say, sit at the table, basically. And so this helped us to create a lot of awareness. So we did radio programs, we put it on the news, it was on social media. This is a lot of our awareness, but I would say it's not yet enough. We all need to keep talking about it. We all need to keep doing it. For one, also, I would want to share my own personal story, because I have my daughter being a person with disabilities. And interestingly, she's a late girl, and she also has a disability. And one of the very peculiar things, I think it was Abosede that talked about it, is reproductive health. And, you know, when she was a child, it was much easier. But as soon as she became a preteen, going into her teenage years, and then, you know, she started doing her period, you know, it was important that there was a clean toilet, or there was an available toilet for where she needed to be able to change when she's on her period, or just be comfortable enough to change her prosthetic limb. And so this has led us to, you know, start creating awareness also, and, you know, provision or on some work on reproductive health, because we know that girls with disabilities need all of these things to be stable for them to be comfortable enough even to come out in the public. So some of the awareness we've done also is with the Out on a Limb program, where we just talk about the abilities of persons with disabilities, and so you're not holding back at all. And so this is a lot of awareness creation. But do I think that it's enough? No, it is not. We need to keep talking about it. We need to keep coming to the forefront, and every opportunity we have to continue to talk about it, we keep doing that, going into the schools, catching them young, the family, also even working with religious, you know, settings to ensure that we are able to reach out to a lot more people, because we can't underestimate the fact that as a country, we are a very religious and cultural you know, set of people. So it's important that through each of these mediums we do this. So Irede Foundation is doing it, ACT Foundation is doing it, a lot of the organizations that are present here, they are doing it, but we cannot stop. We just need to heighten the work that we've done. And more importantly, just like, you know, the work that Chioma does, make sure that we use technology as a big factor to continue to create awareness. I mean, a lot of people right now are on social media. A lot of people are on their devices. If we look at the stats when it comes to the time that people spend on their devices, it's a whole lot. I mean, the other day I was asking someone, have you watched TV ads recently? And she said no. I said, when last were you on YouTube? She said just now. So pretty much technology is the way to go, and social media is that way to go. So we might need to also plug into this and ensure that we use it as a medium to continue to create awareness, while we continue to work with the traditional rulers, you know, the imams and the pastors and all of the people that we have in our community to continue to create this awareness. I think with that, we will definitely you know, get closer and closer to the mark of where we want to be.
Okay, thanks, Krista. I will be going to the other panelists, sorry, to the other attendees. But before then, let me come to you, Chioma. This is the last one for the panelists before I go to the briefly. I want to make it a two-pronged one. The first one you talk about, because Krista just made mention of technology. In your line of work, what are those biases you've seen that are of concern for you, that you think are actually standing on the part of the girls, particularly around your gender bias that you think we need to be alert to? And secondly, the second part of which is also linked to that is, what advice will you give even to those young girls out there those young women out there on how to respond to some of these issues, some of these biases.
Right, thank you. So what are some of the biases that we've seen? There's the popular ones, that technology is not for girls, it's too much for girls. They're the ones around, it will take them away from their homes and from their families, etc. Women are not supposed to seek too much knowledge. We're supposed to be seen and not heard, etc. All of those exist. For women in business, it is often, sometimes you see women, especially married women, who are doing really well. And then you start hearing things like, her husband must be a pushover. She's the one wearing the pants in the relationship. Her husband doesn't have a say. She's not submissive, and all of those types of things. You see women attaining heights within academia, and you hear things like, who is going to marry someone with a master's degree? Who's going to marry someone with a PhD? Who's going to marry someone who is so vocal, who's so outspoken? It's almost as if our voices are seen as, women's voices are seen as, negative indices, right? So a woman who is vocal is seen as a rebel, as someone who cannot be controlled. It is almost as if women are supposed to be spread eagled on the floor for people to walk over before they are seen as worthy, of anything that the society is offering. So these stereotypes exist. You go sometimes into meetings and people ask you, where is the owner of the organization? I'm the head of the organization. You have to answer that question. People immediately judge you as being too young. It is almost seen as if you are not suitable for whatever role it is you've put yourself for, because you cannot speak to or show the man who is above you, as it were, the man who's providing guidance, etc. So these things exist. And it's a nice segue into the second part of your question, which is what to say. Knowledge is critical. I've been an entrepreneur now since 2011. So that's about, it's more than 10 years. And one of the things that I've seen is that it's okay for people to, people who start out not believing you, people who start out not trusting that you can do what you have said you will do. But the knowledge that you have and the skills that you bring to the job and the skills that you bring to every role that you're offered quickly do a lot to turn their minds around. So my advice for people, for women, would be to learn. Right? Your knowledge then becomes your defense, because regardless of how much people want to look down on you and how much they want to say she's not suitable, etc., you are the person with the skill that they're looking for. And so ultimately you find people ending up with egg on their face, because it's like, look, we doubted her, but she can actually do this work. So I'll say go for knowledge. I will also say to the society, because you cannot be asking the oppressed to free themselves, that we need to go for knowledge as well. Right? There's nothing in a woman that makes her inferior to a man. We are all human beings. We have the same color of blood running through our veins. We have the same wants, desires, to succeed, to make something of our lives, to thrive. And so, the basic principle of feminism, which is sometimes seen as a pariah word in Nigeria, but the basic principle of feminism is equality. Equality to aspire, equality to attain, equality of treatment, equality of engagement. And, unless we start to intentionally infuse these principles into our lives, we will keep having these conversations over and over and over again. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot for that intervention, Chuma. Now, I will come to the floor now, to the whole house. I'm sure some of us want to have make some intervention or have some questions. So kindly indicate by raising your hands. Let's see. Let's know that you have questions, or you can type it into the chat box. I'm seeing some comments by someone who, however, didn't put his or her name, just as in Phoenix Note 5. I know the person has raised some concerns about even the type of laws that, yes, as much as we have some laws, there's also the issue of what type of law exists. The person is raising issues that the HIV laws in Nasarawa, Akwa Ibom, Benue, and all other places have some gender biases, and that we have quite a lot of work to do in terms of sensitization if we are going to be able to deal with this. And then the person also mentioned the need for engagement with religious heads, traditional leaders, and the parliamentarians as well. Thanks for that. I wish you have put your name. That's Infinix Note 5. So I'm not seeing hands up yet. If there's anyone with any burning question or wants to make some intervention, kindly indicate by raising your hand. While we're waiting for participants to indicate interest, let me come back to us in the panel. Chioma, thanks for that, relating some of the experiences on issues that you've had to deal with. Same thing with Abosede. Let me come to you. I'm always curious about this. At times we speak, especially as discussants at panels like this, and some of the time I wonder what experience have we had ourselves. So let me come to you, Krista. Are there ways you've also experienced or witnessed, maybe not just say experience, but witness these some of these challenges of gender bias and how it has affected people?
Yeah, so I've experienced it in so many ways. So I give you the first one is that I'm a Yoruba lady that is married to an Igbo man. And so we all know what it is. Well, let me give you a bit of perspective with, you know, the New Yam Festival and the fact that when a man is talking, you cannot open your mouth. You'll be there like this. The thing will be part of what you need to say, and you just keep quiet because of my own upbringing and where I come from. So in Yoruba land, you talk as a Yoruba woman now, but I see Chioma smiling. But in the Igbo setting, you have a say, but you say it through your husband, literally. So, you know, I've had times when I have an opinion and I want to share an opinion, and I'm told to share the opinion through my husband. I'm probably one of the very few people that my husband has kind of like fought for me, so I am able to talk in the immediate family. But even when we go for external meetings, I just really keep quiet. I learned something, in the course of this month, the time when, I need to educate people and let you know when I should talk as a woman. Sometimes when I just, take it and just keep quiet, because really, I don't know, as a Yoruba girl in Abia State, I want to prove that whatever. So sometimes I just really just keep quiet and just, go with the flow. But there are times when I have the opportunity to educate the people around me on the fact that I matter, and then, I have an opinion. One of the things that I've also learned to do, it's not just formal education, but to educate myself across all things. So when I open my mouth to talk, you then say, oh, she has so much to offer. So the attention moves from me being a woman to what I have to offer. So have I gone through all of these biases? Yes, I've been in the workplace. I used to work in the private sector before I moved to civil society. And, I know equal pay at the time was something that we struggled with. So even though I brought a lot to the table, my male counterpart that we have the same role is being paid better than I am, because he has a family, so to say. So yes, these biases are there, but how I've learned to, fight against it is to educate myself. So not just formal education now. I mean, when you see me, you literally think that I'm an Igbo lady, because I've learned to understand the culture. I've learned to know when to speak up. I've learned to be that person that they want to identify with. So I also remember once I was talking to my husband, and we got to an event, and then he was going to introduce me, and he said, meet my wife. And so when we got back home, I told him, meet Crystal, Zubi's wife. I am first Crystal before I am Zubi's wife. So Zubi's wife is great. I love being Zubi's wife, but I absolutely love being Crystal also. So my persona, my person should be recognized first as an individual before, because there are a lot of women that are not married and they're doing amazing things. There are a lot of women that do not have kids yet. They are doing amazing things. So we shouldn't be defined by, you know, mother to Beulah. Rather, I would love to be known as Crystal first, before Zubi's wife,
All right.
and before Beulah's mom.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot, Krista. That's
So
quite
we have some questions.
So Audrey, can you kindly help with some of the questions? I'm having challenges seeing them here.
All right. So this question is actually going to Mr. Laban Onisimus, and it says, what is the plan Nigeria currently is doing to ensure that both men and women are equal? Does Nigeria have a plan for gender equality? Mr. Laban, do you have a response?
Yeah. So for us in plan, of course, I think every one of us in plan knows that when you come to work for plan, you should have a mindset that you're actually working for girls. You should turn it on. You're working for girls. And we always say that we are unapologetic when it comes to issues of girls. We have a gender plan. We also have what we call a gender marker. So for all our projects, as soon as we design the project, we pass it through the gender marker to ensure that it conforms to standards as regards the issue of gender and inclusion. So plan is doing a lot when it comes to the issue of ensuring gender. Even at the place of work, we try to ensure that when we advertise for work, of course, the clause there, women are encouraged to apply. Not even work, even service provision. We try to go a step further to say, okay, women are encouraged to apply. So plan is doing a lot when it comes to the issue of gender. And I always say this, you can't pick a publication of plan and see the face of a man in the cover page. No, that's not possible. You either see a face of a girl or a woman. So these are conscious efforts that we try to put in place just to ensure that everybody has this mindset concerning the issue of ensuring gender and inclusion in the workplace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laban. And we have another question that says, do you see any difference between child marriage and early marriage?
Yes. You know, this has been a bone of contention. I and Tunde have worked on this issue of the national guideline for ending child marriage. So, of course, the issue of age comes into play here. We all know that a child is anyone that is below the age of 18. But you will agree with me that there are some marriages that even if you are the age of 19 or 20, there are force. You are forced into it. So there is quite a difference between the issue of child marriage and early marriage, and the word early. Some people have argued that it is not stick into one place. It depends on where you're coming from. It depends on how you also see it. It depends on the mindset of the woman. So, but we try to argue and we try to correct at every time to say, look, this issue of child marriage, let's call it the way it is. any girl that is below the age of 18, this is clearly a child marriage and should not be considered.
Ambassador, you wanted to chip in to this question. It would be great to have other views respond to this.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I just wanted to chip in because I work in the reproductive health space. Our organization is focused on maternal health. And I just wanted to encourage every single one of us to grant autonomy to girls and women in our lives. I have seen so many girls and women that when they have to make decisions that put their life at risk, even when you want to do cesarean session, when they want to have deliveries, they keep telling you they have to take permission from the male partner, from their fathers, from their boyfriends. And in the process of waiting, we actually lose some of them. So these are conversations that I want to encourage each and every one of us to grant autonomy to young people. Now, as in to young women especially, that they can decide, especially when their lives are at stake. And secondly, is for us to also critically do a self-awareness survey. We are all biased because according to studies, at the age of 6, that's when you become prejudiced. You already form your ideas about your norms. So there is no single person that is no bias, whether you're female. In fact, sometimes we women are like the matriarchs, we're like the gatekeepers of biases because we're the ones that distinguish between our daughters and sons. So you have to remind yourself, because this is how you were raised. Am I allocating a particular kind of work to the boys or to the girls? In the workspace, am I giving male colleagues this work and giving female colleagues this kind of work? Because you find young men start work, their bosses don't tell them to go and get coffee or to go and get tea, but you do the same thing to a female intern that is working with you. So you have to always bring your own bias to the forefront. And I also want to say that generally, we should not be scared to have conversations that elevate girls and women. I always use the analogy of a question of 10. No matter how brilliant you are, if you answer 5 questions well, and you don't attempt to answer the remaining 5, the maximum you can get is 5/10. There is nothing like answering all the 10 questions. So as a country, if we don't optimize the females in the country, it's just simple mathematics. Even if all the men excel in this country, so long as the women are not excelling, the country is only performing at 50% capacity. And women are doing great. We say that Nigerians have the highest number of female entrepreneurs in the world. Every space that women have been allowed to breathe, to lead, has actually led to elevation. So I want us to see that in every sphere, that when women are educated and elevated, we all collectively benefit. But we are all biased. We should always remember that. And it is important for us to bring our bias forward so that they're not blind spots, so that we can then take actions that will correct them as much as we can.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So we're fast running out of time. I know we started late, but perhaps we have another 10 minutes to round up. But we have 3 very great questions that that we cannot just afford to ignore. And one is going to Krista, which says, so I'm going to read all 3 out, and you can just put thoughts through it and anyone can respond. But this particular one is going to Krista, which says, could you speak briefly on recommending how barriers can be broken, specifically for girls and women with disability? Krista, that's for you. I'll go on to the next question, which is to Mr. Laban, and it says, do you know that on the process of achieving gender equality, men are left out sometimes? Because when you see banners says only girls, when you go to the program, only girls are sponsored to go. Why is this so? And the last question, which is quite lengthy, it says the national gender policy and framework is outdated. How can civil society with its resources, especially human resource, support the federal government and states to review and update the national gender policy framework, which provides templates and guidelines for gender interventions?
Thank you very much, Audrey, and thank you for that question. I think the first thing would be that we realize that disability is not lack of ability, or that you can make a decision on your own. And once we start realizing that, I say something that I say disability is a mind game, but also everyone around us needs to know that disability is not inability, is not lack of being able to think and don't equate every form of disability to intellectual disability, because I've seen a lot of people talk about people with cerebral palsy, for instance, and say when you have cerebral palsy, it's an intellectual disability, which is not, because it's just something that has to do with muscle, not being able to have your muscles function. So pretty much, I think that's the first thing. The second thing that I would say to you is, give us a chance. And the easiest thing to do when it comes to people with disabilities is for us to pity persons with disabilities and say, oh, this person has a disability. Hey, yeah, the very common term that we use in Nigeria. Just think of, when you think of people with disability, let it not be, hey, yeah, let it be, how can I remove the barrier? How can I give support? And I give this example all of the time. If somebody is on wheelchair, the person is not waiting for you to carry them. That is not what they are waiting for. All they need is remove the barrier of the staircases. Once you have a ramp, once you have a lift, I can go in there myself. One of the things that we would have done on this recording, for instance, today, to give access to some persons with disability, maybe someone with hearing impairment, will be to have a sign language interpreter. It will change absolutely everything. So they get access, they are able to come in. I think that's the second thing. And the final thing that I am going to say is give access to education. There are a couple of inclusive schools in Lagos State, for instance, and some other people are already looking at it across their states, but make sure that that child with disability gets an education like everyone else. Once they have that access, whether the person has visual impairment, hearing impairment, a physical disability, is autistic, but once they can get an education, then you have removed the barrier, you have removed the bias. I think that way we'll start to make headway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Crystal. And I don't know, do I need to take the other questions again, or the other panel have, put some thoughts to it to respond? Anyone can respond at this point.
I could try. So we talked about the gender, the framework that someone asked about. Yes. It's very interesting because even the old framework was not implemented. Remember that the 35% affirmative was even part of that framework that led for women in positions. So you're very correct. It is time for us to actually change our gender framework. But this time around, it has to be an inclusive process before we come up with the next. Because I feel like a lot of times, because we have this bottom-down approach to most of our policies, we usually don't frame it in a way where the citizens can connect with them. So we have to have a wide range of conversations, including a lot of stakeholders. And when I mean stakeholders, I don't mean office holders. Again, that is another challenge that we've had where we talk to high-level people. What does an average Nigerian family want that will make, what does an average Nigerian family need that will allow them to let their daughters work well, or allow their females to work? For some of them, I give you an example of something they did in Brazil, where they found out that young girls were not going to school. They found out that it was economic. So they turned it around and incentivized parents that allowed their daughters to go to school by giving them some sort of financial support and incentive. That turned around how much girls were being enrolled in school. So you will have to find what are some of the root causes beyond the cultural biases, social, religious. For some people, it's actually just practical interventions. If you can have these wide level sort of conversations, we may actually come up to really reform that is practical, not just on paper, like you said, where people just sign on it and get it over with, but something that all of us are stakeholders, and we all have interest in that framework actually changing. So I totally agree. It's not relevant. But we have to have conversations with really the beneficiary and stakeholders before we draw the next framework.
All right, Mr. Tunde, over to you. Some questions are still popping in there, but we can't take all of them.
All right, thanks a lot. Probably but quickly on the issue of the gender policy, which somebody also asked about. There's actually a national gender policy. I think the challenge is that it has not been given proper publicity. It was approved by the Federal Executive Council on Wednesday at their meeting on March 2nd. That was the first Wednesday of this month, the first executive council meeting this month. Unfortunately, maybe one of the things, I agree with the person who said that what role will the civil society play? We also, because it's not just to have the policy, we also play some important role that civil society organizations in actually review of that general policy to run. It's supposed to run from 2021 to 2026. So what we also do is we try to also collaborate and support Federal Ministry of Women Affairs. So we get across to them and try to see how we provide support for them and also mobilize other civil society organizations to ensure that this is given adequate publicity. Civil society, citizens generally are mobilized behind it to ensure that it is actually religiously implemented. So as Audrey said, we've run out of, we exceeded the time, the agreement we had with the participants. I want to be careful not to hold on for too long. So I don't know if Osai is here with us to quickly just handle the closing part of this. I'm sorry, I'm seeing your message, Zainab Muhammad from Bauchi, the different identity markers such as race, ethnicity, ability, body size, other influence, your gender, how they influence gender identity. Yes, this play a lot of role on it. And I think these are also some of the issues that the panelists have been raising, how this also affect the way we are seen, how we are viewed, and how we, I think, interestingly, Audrey also related some, Krista needed some experience in terms of identity too. As I said, because of time, we've gone beyond agreed time. So, Osai, are you there?
Yes, so the CEO, she is not here, but she'll be represented by Abiodun Owo. She is the Senior Programs Executive here at Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. So Abiodun, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Audrey. On behalf of the entire ACT Foundation family and Plan International Nigeria, I want to say a very big thank you to everyone who has made out time to be here. Our panelists, thank you very much for a very rich discussion. And to our attendees, this wouldn't have been the same without you on board. So a lot has been said. One thing that cut across the submission of our panelists is that we're not doing well. As bleak as that sounds, I believe that there's still hope. There is still hope. And we can always speak up from where we are now. So also, we have also agreed with the fact that we do not need to continue working in silos. Girls Aid is doing a lot of beautiful work. Iradia Foundation is doing a lot of great work. However, we need to consolidate efforts, like you have rightly said. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to work together, partner together to see how we can begin to do better than we are doing now. I was astonished when I hear that Rwanda has the highest number of women in their parliament. That's a good place to start. So if Rwanda can achieve that, definitely Nigeria can achieve that as well. We have other countries, African countries participating here. Kenya, I see we have someone from Uganda. We can also do this and, build new narratives for Africa. And, Chioma has rightly said that what we also need to do is to put out same message out there, continuously put out our message. So I'm going to ask us here, what is going to be our one message? You don't have to answer now, but that's food for thought. I'll close with the words of Alexander Pope. He says, do what you can with what you have where you are. Thank you once again, everyone, for coming. Do have a beautiful rest of the day. Over to you, Audrey.
Thank you very, very much, Abiodun Owo, and thank you to all the panelists, Krista Chibo, Laban Onisimos, Dr. Abosede Lewo, Sunday Aremo, our moderator, Chioma Ogwegbo, board member of Plan International Nigeria, and we also, all of us from Aspire Coronation Trust, we send our deep appreciation to Plan for this collaboration and partnership to commemorate International Women's Day 2022, and to all the participants, thank you all for joining in and coming on time. So we look forward to our spaces, and you can attend most of our events and collaborations we make public in near time soon. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.